is Single Simulcast.
Don't know by now, then you slip.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third episode of Single Simulcast, the video cast. I'm Rashanii, the man with all the answers, and this is Single Simulcast, the show about everything. Today is a bit of a continuation on a topic that I was speaking about in the audio version of Single Simulcast, episode 5, about bad jobs. And again, if you've been in a position where you've had a bad job, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been in a position where you had a bad job and you're a teenager, just wait. Anyways, I was talking about Taco Bell and a place that I can't even remember the name of, and then there was another joint called On the Border, and my daughter came to me and told me that my sister-in-law had just gotten a job, and she's a teenager, and she told me about what she was doing, and the more that I listened to it, the more I laughed, because I thought of a place that was just like this bad job that she's getting into. And I was the same way, that nobody could tell me that it was a bad job. I had to find out on my own. The job that I had when I was 20 years old was with the company called Kirby Vacuum Cleaners. And if you live in Sacramento and you hear the name Kirby Vacuum Cleaners and you work there, or you've ever worked there, you're nodding your head in agreement. But for those of y'all who have never ever seen a Kirby vacuum cleaner, let me give you a little bit of insight about why this possibly was the worst 3 weeks that I've ever spent in the entire history of my life at a job. Now, Kirby Vacuum Cleaner was a place that was advertised in the Sacramento Bee to people like myself who felt hopeless and like we were never going to get a step into the world and we're doing part-time jobs. And they would offer it in huge letters and new job, $2,400 a month base pay, no experience necessary, call for an instant interview, words. And you know, you get excited because, you know, it's like $2,400, you know, when you're a kid and you're not making anything at all. That's like crazy amount of money. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go do this and no experience necessary. I'm going to get a foot in the door and I don't even have to go to college. Take that, Mom. What you going to say now, Mom? And so you take the job against your parents' wishes because I'm grown, and you hitchhike or catch a bus or whatever to the location of this interview. And you know, Kirby Vacuum Cleaner and a lot of places just like it are really lucrative companies for the person who's at the top of the pyramid. See, it's a pyramid scheme in itself where the person at the top is able to afford a modified Mercedes-Benz, and they work in the same office as you, so they come in every morning while you are dancing around to celebrate good times. Come on, Tito, you know, and it's like while you're jumping around and singing, they're standing in the back nodding and looking all happy, and then you realize the reason why they're nodding and looking all happy is because they make about $1 million a year. One of their selling points is to show their tax return and show how much money you can make. Now, they always emphasize the word can because you really cannot, but they never let you know that. What they do is they say that they'll give you a base salary of $12 an hour. And that sounds great to everybody who's been working $7 an hour McJobs. So it's like perfect, you know, and you're all in. And I never understood why the manager was laughing all the time, and I never understood why in the group interview they were taking all comers, and I never understood why one of the guys stood up in the middle of the group interview and said, "This is bullshit," and walked out, and why they were never affected. The band plays on and people keep coming. But I digress. I started in Kirby Vacuum Cleaner being trained for 3 days on how to take a vacuum cleaner apart and put it together. For those of you who have never seen a Kirby Vacuum Cleaner, let me fill you in. A Kirby Vacuum Cleaner is a 35-pound behemoth of a vacuum cleaner that does essentially the same things that a $200 vacuum cleaner does. But wait, there's more! There's really not. There's nothing important about what the functions are, but they say that because it's a Kirby Vacuum Cleaner, that instantly makes it worth $2,400. That's right, that's 2 $2,400 for one Kirby vacuum cleaner. The problem is, if you sell a Kirby vacuum cleaner for $2,400, you don't get a profit. That's right, you actually work for commission, and your commission is every dollar above that $2,400 you're trying to push upon these people. So if the vacuum cleaner costs $2,400 and you want to make at least $300 per each visit, then you're selling a vacuum cleaner for $2,700. Now, a vacuum cleaner at Walmart sells for about $150 to $200, so they're already bumping it up $2,200 freaking dollars for a vacuum. Does anyone else see the real absurdity of purchasing one of these? Well, the people who don't are the people that we prey upon, or they prey upon, and the people that they prey upon are old people. And the old folks that used to be in Sun City and Roseville and Folsom, those are the people that got hit up first. And I remember one day a guy came over to me out of the blue in a grocery store when I was walking around, and somehow he heard me say that I worked at Kirby Vacuum Cleaner. And he looked over at me, and without a moment's notice, he said, "You know, if somebody sold my grandma one of those vacuum cleaners that you're pushing, I'd kick his fucking ass." And I looked at him and I said, "You know, if somebody sold my grandma one of these vacuum cleaners, I'd kick their fucking ass too." Because you know, the first thing that they make you do is they make you go over to your own parents' house. They make you have a sit down. They call it a training. And they want you to try and sell this vacuum cleaner to your own family. Push crack in your own neighborhood before you move it out to the other streets. That's practice. So you're trying to push a $2,400 vacuum cleaner on your grandmother just as practice to see what she's going to say. And my grandma said no, which was good. But when I got out on the streets, you know, I was casing neighborhoods, and I had a plan because they gave me a script on what to do to try and sell these vacuum cleaners. And the way that you got in these doors was to smile. That's right. You would knock, especially as a black man, you would knock hard. And when they finally answer, "Hi, my name is Derek, and I work for Kirby Vacuum Cleaner. Would you like a free carpet cleaning?" Now, sometimes they'd say yes. Often they slam the door. But being out here in Sacramento, in 100-degree temperatures, they usually let us in because they felt bad, which helped. So I would come in to your house with my suitcase in one hand and my Kirby vacuum in another, and I would smile. And I would vacuum your front carpet, and I would smile. And after I got done vacuuming your front carpet, which my mom always mentioned, "You don't even vacuum your own damn room." She wouldn't say damn, but it was in her voice. You know, moms gets mad. And when she gets mad, she uses other words. "You don't even vacuum your own daggone room, you dingaling." And I didn't, you know, clean. But I clean these people's carpet with us. And I vacuum their carpet, and I, you know, say, "Excuse me, where's your bedroom?" You had to give them the look, and "Where's your bedroom?" And old women would be like, "It's in the back." And you'd walk to the back real slow, carrying your Kirby vacuum cleaner, and they'd be trailing behind you, and you're carrying your suitcase, and they don't know what you're about to do. And you go into their bedroom, and you look at them, and and you would gently pull back the blanket of the bed, and you look at them. And then you would pull back the sheets on the bed, and you would and you would take out of this suitcase 9 coffee filters and put them in a row, 3 rows, 3 deep. And you'd look at them, and you'd and you would take the canister that held the dirt from the Kirby vacuum cleaner from what you had just vacuumed, and you would and you would pour that into 3 of the coffee filters, and you would say, "You know what you sleep on every night?" And the old one would be like, "No, what?" And you'd be like, "Dust." And you pour it all over their bed, and you smile. And then you'd be like, "You know what else you sleep on in your bed every night, and they be a little bit more hesitant. They'd be like, no, what? And you'd be like, bed bugs. And you take a canister out of your suitcase and pour it into 3 more containers, and it will be bed bugs. And you say, you know what else you sleep on every single night? And now they be looking at you like, I don't think I want to know what the hell you're talking about. And you'd be like, dead skin. And you would pour dead skin from out of a container that was in your suitcase onto 3 of these coffee filters. So you're pouring someone else's dead skin onto these coffee filters and placing them on their bed. Now, none of it's falling onto their bed. That was important. But you would just leave it there. And you would go back into the front room and you would shampoo their carpet while they sat back there and stared at this dead skin sitting on their bed. Now, if they said that they were interested in buying a Kirby vacuum cleaner because they were so scared at this point in time because you mess with their head and they're germaphobes, sorry germaphobes, now you got to pass a credit check. And no one passed a credit check. We only wanted top of the line people to purchase our wares, if you will, and if your credit was anything like mine, you weren't getting it. And at that point in time, my manager would tell me, pack it up and move out. And I would pack my Kirby back up in top speed. That's why we trained, so we could pack up our stuff in top speed. And I would tilt my cap and I would walk out. Now, at no point did I mention taking that stuff off your bed. No, I left that there just so you had something to think about, so you can get your cash right and come get a Kirby vacuum cleaner. It was an evil job, but somebody had to do it, and somebody had to do at least 14 of them in a month with $500 above what they were supposed to be selling it to make their commission. Because if you didn't make your commission, then you got base pay, which means that at the end of the month, if you didn't make your sales number, you would get a paycheck for $12 an hour. However, before you got that $12 an hour, the big manager would come into the room while you guys are all listening to celebrate good times, and he'd smile because he's a millionaire. And he's smiling, he's singing, he'd clap along, he'd be like, celebrate good times. And then he'd give you your check, and you'd be sufficiently horrified, and you take your paltry little, maybe $1,250 for the entire month, and you'd leave. Sound good to you? Didn't sound good to me either, but I was young, and I really thought that I could take advantage of this system, and I'd be balling because he had a Mercedes, and I never saw him work.
This is Single Simulcast.
Don't know by now, then you slip.